Hello everyone, welcome to my channel. Please subscribe and keep watching more details. The Curse of Oak Island recap, the one that got Rick Lagina smiling. Rick Lagina said early on in this week's episode of The Curse of Oak Island that the excitement was ratcheting up a bit, but by the end it had gone into overdrive for both him and for fans. Not only did they make some huge finds in Season 5, Episode 5, and come on leaps and bounds in their bid to locate the original money pit, we also got a glimpse of some seriously exciting moments to come in next week's episode. But where is this all heading? To a vault filled with treasure, or something different altogether? Here's 10 big takeaways from Season 5, Episode 5. Bone Dry, which finally left Rick with a huge grin on his face. The team really have had their work cut out trying to get to the bottom of the location of the original money pit. With so many works taking place over the decades, the area is literally riddled with holes and shafts. Add to this, as was explained in this week's episode, how so many of the records of previous works are inconsistent and often misleading. And you have one big conundrum. The team had already upped their game with the geotech drilling grid this season, but it appeared they were starting to get a bit disillusioned with the lack of significant finds. Marty also highlighted this episode that there is not an infinite supply of money. With costs this season already soaring into the several millions of dollars, the team seemed to know they needed to up their game once again and do more research to make sure every hole dug moving forward gives them the best chance of success. So that's just what they did. Ever since the Lagina brothers first took over the island in 2006, and since filming on The Curse of Oak Island began in 2014, this story has really centered around Rick. He is the one that was inspired by that famous Reader's Digest article back in January 1965. He is the one that has been ever the optimist. Rick said on this episode that despite the obstacles facing them in the money pit search, "I still believe we'll be successful. I still believe there's something there to be found, and that we will engage in a large-scale engineering project to recover whatever it is at great depth in the money pit. So I'm not giving up." However, the team's geotech drilling efforts were basically their last gasp in terms of searching in the money pit area. If they drilled all 40 holes and found nothing, there's not really much more they could have done, and Marty could feel the burden this was placing on Rick. He said, "I worry about my brother. Right now he's carrying the whole weight of this. He is. And I don't know how he's going to react if we dig all these holes and don't find anything." I mean, he's passionate about it, but he's got a certain reverence about it that could lead to, some really hard feelings. Not between us, but on himself. The episode saw Alex Lagina, Charles Barkhouse, and Peter Fornetti join local area historian Doug Crowell doing research at the Beaton Institute in the town of Sydney, around 300 miles northeast of Oak Island. The main focus of their perusing were documents donated to the Institute by former Oak Island treasure hunter Menstar Chappell, son of William Chappell. One of the documents was a sworn statement by Frederick Blair, who was involved in treasure hunting on Oak Island for over 60 years, including with Mr. Chappell. In the statement, he talked about T. Pearlie Putnam, who was the general manager overseeing work done on the island between 1896 and 1900, and revealed that he was the source of the legendary story about bits of gold being found on a drill bit back in the day. The statement by Blair said, "Mr. Putnam was too conservative and cautious to state publicly the important fact that when the drill came to the surface, it showed unmistakable evidence of having gone through or into gold. He did, however, make such statements in confidence to me and to a few close friends." A sworn statement means it was made under oath and is certainly intriguing, although it's obviously impossible to know its veracity. However, there was another document too. The really important document, uncovered at the Beaton Institute for the team, was another one which showed that the famous chapel shaft, which was dug to find the so-called chapel vault, did not in fact lead directly vertically into the ground. Rather, the bottom of the shaft ended up 10-12 feet north of where the top was, which meant it missed a very important area which may well have included the vault. Before this document was found, the Oak Island team apparently didn't realize how far north the shaft went, and so had not taken that into account when planning their initial geotech grid. So it's lucky they found it because, after rethinking their geotech grid using their new information, the team decided to dig 8 new target holes in an approximately 10 feet, x 20 feet triangle area not covered in their previous grid. They hoped that first of these, a borehole marked H8, would finally lead them to the elusive chapel vault. As well as the remarkable discoveries they did end up making in H8, which we talk about below. The good news for fans is there's also something very significant about it that we already know. H8 was the borehole shown in the Digging Down episode with Maddie Blake at the start of the season, which it was revealed the team believe is above the original money pit, and which we saw them about to start drilling down into with a huge 60 in Kazan. Charles Barkhouse told Rick Lagina on this week's episode, "I think I know what you're thinking. You're thinking that this hole's going to be it." It looks like he could be right. With all the excitement surrounding the money pit, even the metal detecting wizardry of Gary Drayton had to take a back seat this episode. But the discovery of a rose-headed ship spike on the so-called boulderless beach was definitely a significant find. The discovery was run past archaeologist Laird Niven, who said it was definitely from the 18th century, and that it was consistent with there being a wharf on the island at some point. But what for? Dave Blankenship joked that for a spike that size you'd need a ship the size of the Titanic, but that might have been slightly optimistic. Narrator Robert Clotworthy speculated more realistically. Could it have been a place for a pirate to offload his treasure? Perhaps 18th century privateer turned Oak Island landowner Captain James Anderson. The H8 borehole was set on the exact location of the drill platform of 1897, when works on the chapel shaft took place. Initially, despite Rick's positive outlook, it looked like H8 was going to be another dud. After getting down to 140/145 feet, the drill bit apparently struck something in a void, and hopes were raised briefly. But there was nothing conclusive, so Rick had to tell them to just keep on digging. At 195 feet, Rick was looking forlorn as he told Dave Blankenship, "I really had high hopes for this one. Right on the drill platform, it's crazy geologically, kind of weird. But if this hits rock and we don't find anything." He then signaled, "It's over," with his hand. But just as it was looking like a lost cause, geologist Terry Matheson found something amazing. Looking through the spoils from H8, Terry Matheson suddenly uncovered a tiny fragment of pottery, and then another one. As narrator Robert Clotworthy would say, pottery? At 190 feet. Later in the war room, archaeologist Laird Niven identified it as hand-painted pearlware, likely from the county of Staffordshire in England, and which was imitating Chinese porcelain. He dated it from the 1780s to the 1800s, so potentially just before the discovery of Money Pit. But it was found deeper underground than any searchers have ever dug shafts before. So how on earth did it get there? As if the discovery of pottery at 190 feet, that's more than half the length of a 100 meters running track, wasn't extraordinary enough. After looking through the spoils from between 165 feet, Terry uncovered what was initially thought could be the super dense wood Lignum vitae. But Rick Lagina was left totally stunned when later, in the war room, archaeologist Laird Niven told them he was pretty certain it was bone. Rick told Laird, "Everything I thought you were going to say. Bone, wasn't it?" Laird wasn't able to tell whether it was human or animal bone, as it was just a fragment. But then there was the sneak peek for next week's episode, which contained the ultimate teaser. A letter from St. Mary's University in Halifax revealed that there were in fact 2 bones found, and that both were found to be human. Suddenly, all the ominous-sounding previews from earlier in the season make sense. Like the pottery, this is an enormous discovery for the team. But what will it mean for their drilling efforts, and more importantly, whose bones are they? This season was already delivering the goods before we got to this episode. Fans have been commenting how it seems to have a faster pace, with more happening and less recapping of previous information. Last week's episode seemed to have people starting to panic, after the most significant find was a calf gun, which used to belong to Rick Restall. But this week took things to a completely new level, with what could well be the most significant finds ever made on the island. The sneak peek for Season 5, Episode 6 showed more is going to be revealed about H-8 as well as the bones, including the fact that they include hair and soft tissue. We also saw Rick and Marty Lagina, both with big smiles on their faces, after they finally reveal they think they found the original money kit. Next week can't come soon enough.